All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants hangout. We're celebrating Biodiversity Day, so it's been a really exciting day so far, and we've got a lot more hangouts coming up. So I'm pleased to welcome Victoria Arbour. So Victoria is based in Toronto at the Royal Ontario Museum and also the University of Toronto. So Victoria recently identified 4 new species of ankylosaurs, which are those distinctive club-tailed armour-plated plant eaters who are native to Alberta. And she did this by closely examining variations among specimens and collections from Alberta, Ottawa, Toronto, New York, Washington, D.C., Montana, and London. So I'm very pleased to welcome Victoria today, and I'll pass it over to her.
Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be talking about dinosaur biodiversity on this Biodiversity Day themed day. I'm a paleontologist. I work at the Royal Ontario Museum and the University of Toronto. And I wanted to start off by sharing a little bit about some of the work that I do on dinosaur biodiversity and what we can learn about biodiversity in general by studying dinosaurs. So I'm going to do a little PowerPoint presentation, talk a bit about how I do the kind of research that I do and what kinds of questions make paleontologists curious. And then afterwards, I hope you will ask me some questions about dinosaurs, anything that you'd like to ask at all. So I'm going to get started on my screen sharing here. All right, screen share, share. Let's hop over to PowerPoint and watch our show. Okay. All right, so dinosaur biodiversity. Paleontology, you've probably heard a lot about paleontology if you've seen Jurassic Park or Jurassic World. Paleontologists study dinosaurs, but actually paleontologists study all kinds of ancient biodiversity. Anything that's been alive falls under paleontology. We study fossils from all kinds of different groups of animals. I work on dinosaurs, but lots of other paleontologists that I know work on things like fish and mammals and birds and plants, all kinds of different things. So I'm going to talk about dinosaurs, but really it's paleontology studies much, much more than just dinosaurs. So we study things like when species first evolve and how they change through time. We study how ecosystems or whole groups of plants and animals react to changing environments. We also study what happens when lots of species go extinct all at once. So we call those mass extinctions because lots of species disappear all at the same time. So we actually study biodiversity in sort of deep time. So the Earth is really, really old, and we study how species and biodiversity has changed over millions and millions of years. I wanted to point out that dinosaurs existed for a really long time, and some of them are actually closer in time to us than to other dinosaur species. So the Earth itself is really, really old, and dinosaurs existed for a pretty big chunk of time relative to how long we've been around. So on the left here, I've got Stegosaurus, a pretty famous dinosaur. In the middle, Tyrannosaurus, also a pretty famous dinosaur. And on the far right, humans, Homo sapiens, and that's my face there. And T-Rex and Stegosaurus are pretty famous dinosaurs. You probably see them in pictures sharing the same space a lot of the time, but they actually didn't live at the same period of time. Tyrannosaurus rex lived about 66 million years ago, and Stegosaurus lived about 150 million years ago, which is almost 90 million years older than Tyrannosaurus rex. So there's 66 million years between us and T-Rex, but there's 90 million years between T-Rex and Stegosaurus. So dinosaurs lived at different points in time. They also lived in different places around the world. Not all species lived in the same places, just like different animals live in different continents today. So some of the things that we do are study how dinosaurs have changed through time and how they differ in different parts of the world. Paleontologists like to think about things in terms of geologic time, and we use this really fun, colorful chart on the left. You don't have to be able to read all the details on it. I just wanted to give you a little sample of what it looked like. We call this the geologic time scale. So we sort of break up chunks of Earth history into little blocks of time that we give names to, kind of like the chapters in a book. And so dinosaurs first evolved in a period of time called the Mesozoic era. And in contrast, humans live in a chunk of time that we call the Cenozoic era. So we live about 0 million years ago because we're here right now, but dinosaurs first evolved about 250 million years ago. So that's a pretty long time ago. They evolved in a little chunk of time called the Triassic period of the Mesozoic era. They lived for a pretty long time. But a really big extinction event happens at the end of the Mesozoic era. That's kind of the end of the chapter of the age of dinosaurs. That happened about 66 million years ago, and that kind of cleared a bunch of space in the ecosystems for mammals to evolve and become the really abundant big animals that we see around us today. So instead of having things like T-Rex and Triceratops walking around, we have elephants and giraffes and wolves and antelope and all kinds of cool things. So those are some of the big things that have happened, and that sort of gives you a sense of how far back in time some of these things really happened. So why did the dinosaurs go extinct? That's a question that I get asked a whole lot. Why did we see all of these really famous dinosaurs like T-Rex and Triceratops disappear really suddenly from the fossil record? When we take a look at the rocks and we know what age they are, we see dinosaurs up to about 66 million years ago, and then they kind of disappear. So what happened to them? Well, by studying rocks around the world, we know that there is some really good evidence that a really big meteorite hit the Earth 66 million years ago. It was about the size of Mount Everest, which is really big. And when something that big hits the Earth, it releases a lot of energy and causes a lot of problems. And we know that a meteorite hit the Earth because we see things like special layers in the rocks that have elements, chemical signatures that tell us that something from outer space hit the Earth. And we see lots of other things that indicate that something really energetic happened to the Earth at that time. And after that period, we don't see any big dinosaurs anymore. A meteor impact is really bad for the Earth because it changes the climate and the environment really quickly, and evolution can't really keep up with those changes necessarily. So right after the meteor hit the Earth, there were big tidal waves, so there were tsunamis and shock waves, so big pushes of pressure all around the world, and forest fires. But then after that, there was darkness and cold temperatures. And that's because the meteor kicked up a whole bunch of dust into the atmosphere, so up into the air, all kinds of dust that actually blocked out sunlight from reaching the Earth. That's really bad because when it's really dark outside, all of the plants die. Plants need sunlight in order to make the food that keeps them alive. And so when you don't have sunlight, plants die. And when the plants die, the animals that eat the plants die. And when the animals that eat the plants die, the animals that eat those animals die. So if you've ever talked about food chains in your classrooms, if you kill plants, that kind of kills your whole food chain. And so as a result, almost 70% of all the species that were on Earth went extinct because the food chains collapsed and because there were too big an environmental change for evolution to really react to. So evolution takes a really long time. It's sort of small incremental changes in species over time. And when something changes really quickly and it changes the environment, it's hard for evolution to react to that. And so that's actually kind of similar to what's happening with humans today. Humans are changing the environment really quickly, and species can't always adapt, and so they go extinct. So in some ways, we can think a little bit about what's happening to biodiversity today by looking at what happens in the fossil record when environments change really quickly, like when a meteor hits the Earth. So how many species of dinosaurs do we know of? Well, we know of about 800 species of dinosaurs in the Mesozoic area that have been discovered and named so far. So that's a lot, and it's actually increasing even faster. There's lots of people my age who grew up watching Jurassic Park and Jurassic World and things like that, who are now paleontologists doing research, and there's more of us all over the world in different countries. And so 800 species of dinosaurs have been named so far, but 32 of those were named just last year. That's a whole lot of dinosaurs all in 1 year. And in fact, 19 more have already been named this year. So we're only about halfway through, and we already have almost 20 new dinosaurs. So we might even have more than 30 dinosaurs named by the end of this year if we keep going at this rate. So it's a very exciting time to be a paleontologist, and I think it's a great time to be a kid learning about paleontology because you have all kinds of new dinosaurs to learn about every day. We group dinosaurs into sort of 3 big groups of species that have similar characteristics that kind of unite them together and show that they have a shared evolutionary history. So one of those groups is called the ornithischians. These are the plant-eating dinosaurs. They have lots of famous species that you've probably heard of. This is the group that has the horned dinosaurs like Triceratops, has animals like Stegosaurus, the duck-billed dinosaurs like Edmontosaurus and Parasaurolophus with that really cool crest up the back of its head. And it also has the dome-headed dinosaurs like Stegosaurus and Pachycephalosaurus. So this is a really cool group of dinosaurs. All of them eat plants as far as we know. Another big group of dinosaurs are the sauropods, or the long-necked dinosaurs. This includes animals like Apatosaurus and Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus and Brontosaurus. And all of these guys eat plants, and they also have these really long necks, and they're super, super gigantic. These are some of the biggest animals that ever walked on Earth. And finally, the last group of dinosaurs, the sort of big group of dinosaurs where we can group a bunch of species together, are the theropods. And these are mostly predatory or meat-eating dinosaurs, although a few of them also evolved to eat plants, which is pretty cool. But we're going to talk mostly about the meat-eating ones. And this is the group that includes Allosaurus and Spinosaurus and Tyrannosaurus. So hopefully everybody knows about Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's a pretty cool dinosaur. And some of these are really huge, like T-Rex, and some of them are really small. They come in all different sizes, and most of them walk on 2 legs and have a really, really long tail. This is also the group that has Velociraptor, a really famous dinosaur. If you've seen Jurassic Park or Jurassic World, you've probably heard about Velociraptor. And Velociraptor is a little dinosaur, a little meat-eating dinosaur with a really sharp claw on its toe and little teeth all through its long, long snout. And what we've been learning about this group of dinosaurs is that they share a lot of characteristics with birds that are alive today. So they have a wishbone, a sort of special bone that's in birds. They've got little special features in their wrist and other aspects of their anatomy that tell us that they're closely related to birds. And one of the most special things is that they have feathers. So just like birds today, these little raptor dinosaurs probably were covered in lots and lots of feathers, which is really cool. So in this particular picture, you can see these sort of dark smudges coming off the back of these wings. These are feather fossils. We're finding more and more examples of feathers in these theropod dinosaurs every year. So we're tracing them further and further back in their evolutionary history. So what this tells us is that birds are actually just a really weird group of theropod dinosaurs. They belong to this big group of theropod dinosaurs. They're not a separate special group that evolved on their own. So really, birds are just theropod dinosaurs that have evolved into all kinds of different ecosystems and niches, the special word that we use for the sort of lifestyle and habitat that you occupy. And so really, we can think about birds as living dinosaurs. So when we talk about dinosaur biodiversity, there's about 800 species of Mesozoic dinosaurs, but there's more than 10,000 living dinosaurs today. So dinosaur biodiversity isn't over, and there's still lots for us to learn about the living dinosaurs, the birds. So how do paleontologists study dinosaur biodiversity? Well, we get to spend a lot of time outside in nice, hot, dry environments where we walk around and look for dinosaur fossils. So if you follow my rock hammer here, this is my rock hammer I use for digging up dinosaur fossils. There's a nice, shiny, triangular thing sitting up above it. That is a theropod dinosaur tooth from a tyrannosaur. So we spend lots of time walking around outside until we spot little teeth and bones. And sometimes that leads to big bones that we get to dig up from the ground. So we use all kinds of tools like jackhammers and chisels and hammers and saws. And we bring those fossils back to the universities or the museums where we work. And we use special tools in laboratories to help clean them up and remove the rock from all around the fossil so that we can study them. So we use things like little jackhammers and paintbrushes and dental picks. We use lots of dental tools for some reason. Those work really, really well for cleaning up dinosaur fossils. Once we have them all cleaned up, we spend a lot of time studying them. So we'll take observations, we'll compare them with other dinosaurs that we know and see how they might be different. We work with our friends and colleagues, which is really fun. We might take lots of notes about the anatomy that we see. We might cut up those dinosaur fossils so that we can look at the cell structure inside the bones. We can do things like figure out how old a dinosaur was when it died by doing that. We can also do things like take x-rays through those dinosaur bones and take a look at what they look like inside without cutting them up. So there's lots and lots of different techniques for taking a look at dinosaurs, but it all rests on making observations and being able to look at lots and lots of fossils and animals today so that we understand anatomy. One of my jobs is I get to figure out how many ankylosaurs there are. So in particular, I look at ankylosaur biodiversity. And these are the dinosaurs that have these sort of cool, gnarly heads. They've got spikes all over their bodies, and they have tail clubs in some of them. I think that's a really cool part of them. So some of the work that I get to do is to figure out how many species there are and see if there's new species or if there's species that we haven't identified yet in museum collections. And some of the work that I've done has shown that actually ankylosaurs were a lot more diverse than we used to think they were. So I looked at lots of fossils in museum collections that all were thought to represent one species, and they actually turned out to represent at least 3 or 4 different species. So they were a lot more diverse, but it took a lot of looking and observing and making notes about these fossils in order to figure that out. And one of the really fun things I get to do is name new species. And so one of the very newest dinosaurs that have ever been named is one that I got to name just a few weeks ago. This is a dinosaur called Zool crurivestator, and that name means Zool, the destroyer of shins. It's named after a monster from Ghostbusters. And it was just named on May 10th, so you're some of the first people to really hear about it because it's so brand new. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about it, I've got a website here at the bottom of the screen, rom.on.ca/Zool, where you can find out all kinds of things about this cool new ankylosaur. This is a new ankylosaur from northern Montana. It's about 75 million years old, and it has a beautiful skull and a really great tail. And we also have the belly, but we're still preparing that out of the rock because it weighs about 15,000 kilograms right now. It's really big. It's about the size of a truck so far. And this dinosaur is really important because it's one of the most complete of these tail-clubbed ankylosaurs that we've ever found. And we're going to be able to learn a lot about their anatomy because it has all of those armor bones still in place, which is really rare. And it has some of the skin preserved, which is even more rare. So this is a really exciting dinosaur that I got to work on, and we just got to name and reveal and sort of add to the biodiversity of ankylosaurs. And that's helping us learn about how diverse they were 75 million years ago and how ankylosaur biodiversity was changing in the last 10 million years before they went extinct. So that's a pretty exciting discovery that we were able to announce just really recently. So what kinds of things are paleontologists still curious about dinosaur biodiversity? We get to name new species, which is really fun. We get to understand how they went extinct. But what sorts of things are we curious about dinosaur biodiversity? What sorts of questions do we like to ask? Well, some of the things that we're doing is we're still filling in a lot of gaps in the dinosaur fossil record around the world. We know a lot about the dinosaurs from some places and some time periods. So we know a lot about the dinosaurs, say, in the last 10 million years before that mass extinction in, say, Montana and Alberta. But we don't know as much about the dinosaurs at that time period in eastern North America. So if you live in North Carolina or New York or Nova Scotia, we don't know as much about dinosaurs from there. We also still don't know a lot about dinosaurs from places like Africa or Russia or Antarctica. So there's lots of places around the world where we don't know a lot about dinosaurs. There's a lot of time periods where we don't know about dinosaurs either. So we know a lot about dinosaurs from about 75 million years ago. We don't know a lot about dinosaurs from 90 million years ago because there aren't a lot of places that have rocks the right age. So some of the work that I got to do when I was down in North Carolina working at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences was join Lindsay Zano on expeditions to New Mexico, where we went and looked for new dinosaur fossils that were about 92 million years old. And we found some, which is really great. So we're going to be able to add to the biodiversity of dinosaurs from a time period where we don't know very much. So we get to fill in a little bit of a gap in the dinosaur fossil record. So that's a really fun thing that we get to do. We also are learning about how dinosaurs first evolved and who their close relatives are and why they became so successful in the first place. So dinosaurs went extinct in a mass extinction about 66 million years ago, but they also first evolved after an even bigger mass extinction that happened before they first appeared. So why did they become so successful instead of, say, crocodiles' relatives, like the big fellow that you see in the back of this picture, or even the relatives of mammals that evolved at about the same time? So what was special about dinosaurs that they became the things that were so diverse and successful and occupied all these different cool body shapes. So that's something that we're still learning a lot about that we don't know a whole lot about. And we're also trying to figure out why birds survived the mass extinction that killed off the other dinosaurs. So a lot of dinosaurs and birds looked pretty similar about 66 million years ago. They were little feathered, clawed, predatory dinosaurs. And then there were little small seed-eating birds. Maybe things like dinosaur diet and bird diet helped birds survive the mass extinction that killed other dinosaurs. So some of the work that my colleagues and friends at the Royal Ontario Museum have been doing is taking a look at how diet might have helped birds survive the mass extinction, maybe by being able to eat seeds instead of plants or other animals. That helped them survive that cold, dark period after the mass extinction, or after the meteorite impact that killed most of the other life on Earth. So that's a question that we're still trying to answer, is why did birds survive when other dinosaurs didn't make it? So if you would like to learn more about some of the research that I've been doing, I've got some resources here, like my website and blog, some resources through the Royal Ontario Museum where you can learn more about Zool. And I also help create an online course at the University of Alberta that teaches you all about the basics of dinosaur paleontology. So you can check those out if you're interested in learning some more after we finish talking today. That's the end of my little PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and then we are going to hopefully answer some questions.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Victoria. That was great. So let's, get to the classes now. So we'll go to Miss Taylor's class first, if you can hear me. Potentially. Miss Taylor?
Oh, yeah. I think this is, they have a question. Do you guys have one? Okay, go on to. Yeah,
Why do they get so big?
you have to go on. And what is it?
Was the question, why do they get so big?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, perfect. So that is a really good question. One of the reasons dinosaurs might have been able to get really, really big, especially things like the sauropod dinosaurs, is because of a feature they actually share with birds. So birds have this really weird anatomical feature where their body is actually full of little air sacs. So instead of having just two pairs of lungs like we do, they actually have little holes of their lungs that go all through their bones. That helps them stay really light, and actually is how helps them breathe a little bit. So they're really efficient at breathing compared to mammals. So sauropod dinosaurs, those long-necked ones, also were full of holes in their bones that their lungs went into, basically. So they were full of these little air sacs. So their bodies were a lot lighter than a mammal that was about the same size. This might be something that helped them get really big compared to mammals. So not all dinosaurs were really big, but some of them got really big, maybe because of this feature that they share in common with birds.
Awesome. All right, so just in interest of time, to make sure all the classrooms get at least one question, we're just going to go on, and if we have time, we'll loop back. But if Miss Arbour, can you hear me?
Yes, we're here. I was going to question.
Perfect. So if you have a question.
All right, Brett, go ahead, ask your question.
Do ankylosaurs have teeth or not?
Do ankylosaurs have teeth? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so ankylosaurs have no teeth at the very front of their face. So they have a really wide beak without any teeth at the front. And then in the back of their jaw, they have really, really, really tiny teeth. So in a great big head like this, their teeth might be this big. And they look kind of like a hand. If you put your hand up like this, that's kind of what their teeth look like. They have like little leaf-shaped teeth, and that tells us that they ate plants probably.
Sweet. Okay, so let's move on to Miss Coates' class, if you can hear me.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay, go.
Perfect.
Do ankylosauruses use their clubs, their tails, to like fend off predators?
Ooh, what a great question. That's one of the reasons I think that ankylosaurs are really cool, and that's some of the work that I think ankylosaurs was to look at how they could swing their tails and use them as weapons. And so some of the things that I did was I made 3D computer models that look a little bit like they're made out of Lego bricks, and then I smashed them into things in the computer. So I didn't smash real fossils, I smashed digital models of these fossils in the computer, and I looked at what would happen to them. So you can sort of see like the colors of how much force and stress were all over the tail club and whether or not they would have broken. What we were able to find out is that ankylosaurs could hit their tails really, really hard, but they were really good at not breaking when they smashed them into things. So that tells us that they could use them as weapons, but it's really hard to know exactly who they fought with those tail clubs.
Perfect. Okay, so let's go to Miss Schneckner's class.
Okay, ready, Sammy? Okay, go ahead. Do you not? Okay, Anna Kate.
You go first.
Okay, scoot. Okay, Anna Kate, go ahead.
What made the asteroid came to make the dinosaurs extinct?
Ooh, that's a good question. So why did a meteor hit the Earth? So in our solar system, there's lots and lots of asteroids and meteorites just kind of floating around out there orbiting the sun. And once in a while, with really bad luck, one of those might hit the Earth. So sometimes they're really small. If you see a shooting star outside, that's really, really small pieces of dust and particles out in the solar system that are entering the Earth's atmosphere. Sometimes really big ones hit the Earth too. So it's kind of random, and it's not really something that you have to worry about. It happens once in a very, very, very long time.
All right, sounds good. And so Mr. Gauzel's class, you might have to unmute your own microphone. Can you try talking?
Yep. Can you hear us?
Perfect. Yeah, we're good.
How do you find out what colors the dinosaurs are?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's actually really hard. It's something that some researchers are trying to figure out right now, if we can actually tell what colors dinosaurs are. And in really special circumstances, we can find evidence for certain colors like black or brown. But a lot of colors like blue and yellow and green are probably not going to leave any evidence in the fossil record. It just has to do with how colors are made in our bodies, in our fur and feathers. So when I show pictures of dinosaurs and they're sort of looking like they were when they were alive and they have colors on them, what we usually do is take inspiration from animals that we see around us today. So we look at animals that might have lived in similar habitats or might have had similar behaviors, and we use a little bit of imagination to recreate what they would have looked like.
Perfect. Okay, so we should have time to loop back for one quick question from each classroom if you have time, Victoria.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. All right, so we'll just start right back with Mr. Gossel's class. Do you have another question?
Yeah. Okay. Cora.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Come on up, Cora. Let's go. We're just give us a second here.
No worries.
Yeah.
Hello.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
Ooh, that's always a really hard question. So my favorite group of dinosaurs are the ankylosaurs, and I think my very favorite ankylosaur right now might have to be Zool, the new one that I talked about in this presentation, because it's such a pretty fossil. I really like studying that one.
Cool. All right, and so we'll go back up to Miss Schneckser's class. Do you have another question?
Quick.
How long have you been studying dinosaurs?
Good question. So I really like dinosaurs ever since I was probably about your age, and I never really grew out of that phase. And then I've been really lucky to get to study them for about 10 years now. So that's been a lot of fun, but it takes a long time to be a paleontologist. I had to do lots and lots of university degrees. When I finished university, if we talked about it like we talk about grade school, like grades 1 or grade 2 or grade 3, I was in grade 22 when I finally finished school. So it can take a long time, but it's a lot of fun.
Sounds good. Okay, and to Miss Coates' class, if you have another question.
Okay. How do you guys know where the dinosaur bones go in?
Oh, where to dig them up or how to put them back together?
Like how to put them back together?
That's a good question. So we get to spend a lot of time learning about how bones and bodies are put together. So we take classes where we learn about animal anatomy. Sometimes we do animal dissections so we can understand how organs and muscles and bones are all related to each other in the body. And we just spend a lot of time in museum collections looking at fossils so that we can sort of remember and picture them in our head and learn how they go back together. But it can be really tricky sometimes if you just have a very small piece of a fossil to figure out what it is. So sometimes it takes a long time to figure it out.
All right, awesome. And so now let's go to Miss Ober's class again.
One more. Okay, Bree, go ahead.
Is the ankylosaurs the first dinosaur to live?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I couldn't quite hear it. Can you say it a little bit louder?
Is the ankylosaurs the first dinosaur you have ever found? And if not, what was the first dinosaur you have?
Is the ankylosaurs the first dinosaur I ever found?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so the ankylosaurs are actually not a very common group of dinosaurs to find. They're kind of rare compared to duck-billed dinosaurs and horned dinosaurs. So I haven't actually found a lot of fossils of ankylosaurs when I've been out digging them up. I find little pieces of their armor sometimes, but not usually whole skeletons. So some of the work that I do is I go around into museums where people have been collecting dinosaurs for like 100 years, and I take a look at the fossils that have already been collected in order to learn more about their anatomy.
Cool. All right. So finally, let's go to Miss Taylor's class. If you have another question.
Why do we know more about Western North American dinosaurs than Eastern North American dinosaurs?
Ooh, that is a really good question. So back in the time where dinosaurs are really common in North America, so about 75 million years ago to 66 million years ago, North America looked totally different than it does today. There's an ocean that goes all the way up through the middle of North America, so all the way up sort of through Alberta and Saskatchewan and down in the western United States as well. So basically the Gulf of Mexico and the Arctic Ocean were connected together. So it's really weird. We call it the Western Interior Seaway. And the Rocky Mountains were kind of being pushed up at that time. That's sort of when the Rocky Mountains were forming and getting really, really tall, and there were lots of volcanoes that were active at that time. And so that combination of things meant that there was a really good habitat for dinosaurs to live in. They lived on the coast of that seaway. They seemed to have really liked the coast and the nice humid weather that would have been there. And there was lots of sediment eroding off of the mountains that actually buried dinosaurs, not sort of in a landslide, but there was lots of sediment being deposited that actually meant that dinosaur bodies would get buried and fossilized. So you sort of need a combination of two things. The eastern half of North America, on the other hand, didn't have big mountains being pushed up because its mountains, the Appalachians, are much, much older than the Rocky Mountains. And so Eastern North America was a lot flatter. So dinosaurs probably lived there, but they weren't going to be preserved as easily as they were in the western part of North America. So it's kind of a funny combination of geology and what the oceans looked like at that time and what conditions there were for actually fossilizing dinosaurs. So we're still learning a lot about the ones in Eastern North America, and it's just really, really tricky to actually figure some of that stuff out.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's a great way to finish it. So thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us. I'm just going to unmute all the microphones. If you want to give a big thank you to Victoria. Awesome. All right. Thanks so much again, Victoria. And awesome. All right. Be sure to check out other Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants hangouts, or other biodiversity ones later today. And everyone have a great rest of your day. Take care.